Hi there. The first thing I'm noticing about this new StreamYard platform is that I have to remember to add myself to the stream. So I apologize for the delay in actually getting on, getting myself on here. I'm getting faster. I'm getting better at this. This is part of my whole 2020 new decade, learning to streamline or experimenting with streamlining um, my content creation. So here we are. And thank you for tuning in whenever you get to tune in. And I wanted to come on today and talk about defining moments. We usually think about defining moments. When someone talks about a defining moment, it's usually a defining moment when they're usually talking about a defining moment when they've actually figured out or had an experience where they've had some crystal clear um, epiphany about who they are or the direction they're taking, and then they make a pivot or they make a change and their life moves off into another direction. Now, there are other kinds of defining moments that are um, not necessarily as directly triumphant as those types of defining moments that you read about in, the success memoirs of people who've made these great achievements. And those are those defining moments where we draw conclusions about ourselves um, that just aren't true. And actually, a lot of our adult experience, unless you've done a lot of work on yourself, and even with doing a lot of work on yourself, sometimes I think we set up our adult experiences from those soul level agreements maybe that we had and then came into childhood with. And our parents give us opportunities for defining moments. Our friends, our childhood situations give us those opportunities for drawing conclusions about ourself or our situation that just isn't true. So in human design, we talk about that as, perhaps the not self conditioning that you would see in, and I have a chart out here, but I'll just, for illustration purposes, there's only one undefined center here. So this person is taking in through their chart energy in that one center, where if they're not aware that that's not who they truly are, they may be drawing conclusions about uh, what they're about, who they are, and all of that, and maybe trying to uh, fashion behaviors, or they have reactions and behavior patterns that reflect this aspect of them that isn't really their truth. So for instance, this person could feel like they're ultra emotional. And actually, I've actually done reading for someone who had all of their gates defined on their emotional center, on their undefined emotional center, and they could cry at the drop of a hat. And they really define themselves by as someone who was really truly emotional. And I don't think this person actually really got it, that they were filtering and feeling everyone else's emotions. Now, for him, he's been able to ride that through his life and kind of move with the changing and shifting strong emotions that he felt. Um, I'll give you an example from my personal experience of how this has happened in my life, and maybe this will kind of get you to consider or to ponder perhaps where you've had defining moments where you've drawn conclusions about yourself that aren't true. Because once you recognize what's not true about you, or what's not true that you've been thinking about yourself, then that's like your springboard to really know and live from your truth. And in human design speak again, knowing what's not true about you, knowing what's not consistent about you, knowing what you can't rely on in your openness kind of gives you that springboard, that recognition, or gives you that opportunity to recognize, oh, that's not me. This is me over here, on the defined areas. So for me, one of the defining moments in this framework that happened, and I've been working through this over the past few months, it just sort of came up out of the blue, was a memory that I have around of being around maybe 10 or 11 years old. And I had a friend at that time, and I don't have an idea of what her chart is. I imagine she's a manifesting generator or something like that. But I was very, very close to this friend. We were always paired together in activities. We had kind of grown up together from kindergarten on. And she always seemed to take initiative to just get things going on her own, to come in and know how she could be of service, or what she needed to do to really help a situation. And she really had that energy to do that, to really step in and say, hey, here we are at a family picnic. And we were 9 or 10 or 11 years old at this time. But she would say, I'll take the hamburger and I'll make the hamburgers, and, and I'll do my part here. And then she wouldn't stop. She could keep going and going and going. So my father, looking at her and me tagging along with her, really started to harass me about why I couldn't be more like my friend, why I couldn't see what needed to be done and take the initiative to do it. And he, I think, I know his intentions were good. And when I told him to knock it off, he did knock it off. He realized what he was doing. But there was a period of time there where he was just relentless about this, because in his mind, in with his conditioning and his programming, he really felt that I needed I had the potential to kind of take the bull by the horns, and I needed to grow in that direction. So, that was like the programming that sort of defined me, or I let define me at that time, where I developed these behaviors of really trying to keep up. Now, in my human design chart, as a projector and with certain gates that I have, my definition, certain things in my definition and all of my undefined centers, it reinforced that experience. It reinforced that conclusion that I drew about myself, that I was somehow inadequate and needed to work extra hard to keep up. And the way that I filter energy through my undefined sacral center and my undefined will center, wanting to prove my worth and value, all of that played into this moment where I defined myself as someone that had to work hard to keep up and to take the initiative and to be more like my friend, right? So this is something that I've been working on all my life, to really come back to this place where I understand that that's not me. And human design in that respect has been very, very extremely valuable. I don't think there's any other system that would have gotten me to the point where I could just logically see that this is not me, that I could really have concrete evidence that the way I operate is entirely different. So I want to ask you, and you can feel free to leave that in leave your comments wherever the comment box is, wherever this video is. What was a major defining moment in your life where you drew a conclusion about yourself that just wasn't true? So what was a major defining moment in your life where you drew a conclusion about yourself that just wasn't true. And when you've pondered that, don't get lost in it, don't wallow in it. It could be very emotional. I know it was emotional for me when I kind of circled back around to that memory, and I happened to marry my high school sweetheart, and he knew this friend, he knew my father, and all of that. And when I told him about that, it just kind of came out of my mouth. I don't even know what we were talking about. He was like, wow, you've been carrying that around all this time. And I didn't even realize that I was still carrying that, and it was sort of driving me under the surface. So, and the great thing about recognizing those types of defining moments is that you bring them up not to wallow in, not to feel bad about yourself, not to feel sorry for yourself, but to understand, oh, this is something that reinforced my not self experience. So this is something, because I have evidence here on this piece of paper or on this chart, that that I can draw a direct relationship or some kind of relationship between that experience and what's open on my chart, and how I might have been processing that through my own, that programming that was created. It's something that you can begin to neutralize and let go of and get past. So it's very powerful to reflect upon that question of what was a major defining moment where you drew a conclusion about yourself that just wasn't true. And how are you carrying that with you today? How are you still playing that out today? And if you're into human design, I mean, those two questions are enough to keep you busy for a long time, to keep your contemplation and reflection practice occupied and full of something to do for a while, even without knowing anything about your chart. But if you're into human design, or even if you're into the gene keys and you're into the Venus sequence, or any part of the gene keys, really, you can begin to look at that in that neutral way to understand how your own design, how your own genetic profile has sort of set this dynamic up within you. And the reason, this is what I believe, the reason that we have these dynamics, that we've set up these dynamics, that we've had these experiences early in life that define our not self places, so to speak, is so that we can have something to grow from, to have to contribute to our soul's growth and experience. So it's not like it's this necessarily, these not self-defining moments are not necessarily these really bad, awful things. They're places where we really get the opportunity to come back home, to ourselves, whether we're coming back home to the definition of on our chart, if that's how you interpret it, or going through and elevating our frequency into from the shadow experience of that programming into the gift in the city, if you're following the gene keys or working with the gene keys, or if you're just doing your any other personal growth and transformation process that assists you or supports you in growing your wisdom, growing your awareness, really truly awakening to your power. So, you can look at it in the context. We look at it, when you're looking at it with me, we're looking at it in the context primarily from your human design chart, a little bit from your gene keys at this point. And also, if you're getting some energy alignment work, we're looking at your soul blueprint as well. But all of that kind of helps you to bring the puzzle pieces together for yourself. But the two main questions are, those first two questions that you can begin to ponder. to identify the defining moments where you drew false conclusions about yourself and how you're still living that out today. Now, for those of you who are on the human design journey, this is what we are exploring in the deconditioning blueprint. So I'll leave a link wherever I can leave a link here for you to check that out. And I'm rolling it out slowly this year. I'm not rushing my pace because I know that I don't need to keep up with anyone. And I'm allowing grace and interest and invitation and support to come in and really energize the program. So there's plenty of time for you to hop on board when the time is right if this piques your interest. But these questions are what we're looking at on the human design chart in terms of understanding what the conditioning dynamics are in your openness and how that really affects you today. Understanding where you can look to see what the strongest influence is. And then that hopefully turns on lights for you. I know in our first live call, some lights did get turned on about relationship dynamics and who was amplifying who's not self expression and conditioning who was conditioning who to act a certain way that they don't normally act, that wasn't very pleasant. And this is just one example in one of the students' charts with someone that she had a relationship with, so this is what we're exploring, and I invite you to explore this also on your own to really sink into those questions, because it's not just, there are these defining moments, these springboard moments where you have this epiphany that moves you into this change, and that's what we usually talk about as defining moments. But those springboard moments are often preceded by a recognition of who you're not. And I'll give you another example of this, not taking in the human design stuff, but when I was the head of the outpatient drug and alcohol counseling center at the Navy base in Yokosuka, Japan, I had this epiphany. I was going through a huge spiritual awakening at that time. I didn't know that's what it was, but I knew that there were things I was experiencing, and the books on the Navy base in the bookstore I couldn't find anything there that was remotely explaining what I was going through. But I had this huge epiphany. I was sitting there going through client files and, checking off all the checklists, because we would screen people for drug and alcohol addiction and abuse. And I realized with a stack of folders like this that, this isn't what my life is about. This is not what I'm about. Yes, it's the closest thing I could get to experience, my soul's calling in the occupation, in the position where I was in the United States Navy. But I had this light bulb moment where I recognized that this is not it for me. These files are not it for me. What I'm experiencing here is not it. And from there, I springboarded into this epiphany of my life is about healing. And that's what my guiding light was moving forward from there, to go into massage, and then, eventually evolve into this thing that I do that's even a more authentic expression, this thing that I do to turn on lights for you, turn on lights inside of you. It all came from this recognition that this is not me. This is what I'm about. So it's kind of like that on the chart, this is not me. This is what wait, hold on. I have dyslexia here with this camera. This is not me. This is what I'm about in this chart. This is not my chart. So, on whatever level you are, I really want you to have those epiphany moments where you recognize, hey, this isn't me. I'm living from that place where I drew that conclusion all those years ago about my situation, about my life, and it's not me. And from there, you can kind of, it can almost be instantaneous a lot of times that you get a picture or a light bulb comes on where you realize this is what I'm about, because I recognize that that's not what I'm about. So that's what I have today. I will leave a link wherever I can leave it for the deconditioning blueprint. It's actually, if you go to my website, which is right there. And you click on the little tab at the top that says courses, you'll see deconditioning blueprint drop down. So thank you so much for being here. I think I'm going to like this StreamYard platform to live stream. And if it looks like it's going to be a really good thing, I'll probably upgrade so that I can stream on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. I think that would just be so awesome and so much fun. And you don't have to chase me around the internet to watch my videos. So I'm going to leave it at that. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week, and we will continue again soon. Bye.